Count to 10 and then stop. Count to 10 and then stop. How's that?
Okay.
Now I hear Magda, Magda. Which one do you prefer?
I prefer Magda, but I have difficult time with you all Americans because you can't seem to say Magda.
I could say Magda.
Very good.
Bravo, pedimos. You learn any Greek after all those years in that household?
I'll say it however you would like for me to say
It's fine. I answer to everything.
Okay,
Maggie, Magda,
Maggie.
you know.
okay. I've never heard that one being called.
Yeah, my family called me Gaga because my brother couldn't say Magda. So I had that for a long time.
Well, Todd, whenever you're ready. Okay, all right. Oh, shoot. I kicked the light. That's not
It
good.
took him forever to put that there, now you know.
They have big feet. Well, first of all, thanks for agreeing to sit down and talk with us. We're really excited about listening to your story.
Thank you for asking.
For the record, could you state your name so we have it on video?
All right. You want the whole thing?
Sure.
Magda prodromo Fanaritis.
Impressive.
So there too.
Well, thank you.
And I go from Maggie to anything else. I answer to anything you like to call me, just so long as it's done lovingly.
Okay, how about Dame Magda?
Oh, very good.
Oh, Dame Magda, where were you born?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. How did you make it up to Warren?
I got married and came to this, and came to Warren.
Oh, so you met, did you meet John in Philadelphia?
I certainly didn't meet him in Warren.
Yeah, okay, so you met him in Philadelphia. What was John doing for a living when you met him?
What he did all his life, chemical engineer, and he did design and sales. And he traveled all over the world. And he was nice and took me from the time I was 50 on, I also traveled the world.
It's great. It's a great opportunity to be able to do that.
Definitely.
Magda, where are your parents from?
Turkey. The Greeks who lived in Turkey were always Greek. They were never Turks. And the women did not go out alone because it was dangerous. They never got to go to school except we have a poem in Greek. By the light of the moon, they go to walk to somebody's home in the basement, and they are taught to read and write and to learn about the church.
So Magda, did they then emigrate to Greece?
In 1924, there was an exchange of populations between the Turks and the Greeks. And there were a lot of Turks living in Thessaloniki and northern Greece. And they swapped, not homes, but presents. And the Greeks who were in Turkey came, and most of them settled in Macedonia. Not the Macedonia that we have decided exists, which doesn't exist, but Macedonia, which is in the northern part of Greece, next to Turkey. And most of them stayed in Thessaloniki or Kavala. George Theo comes from Kavala. So, and we use a different vocabulary. When I married my husband, his mother came from Sparta. I had to relearn the name of everything I ate. It was not the same food, different names. And actually, it's like here, in that when you go south, you're doing things with different names, which are exactly the same things we're doing up here.
So Magda, how did they come to the U.S.? At what time?
In the 20s. Well, it depends. My father-in-law came here and came with his nephew Fanis.
Okay.
And they went to California and they helped build the railroad.
Yeah.
And a lot of Greeks lived there, and there have been shows on TV showing Greek families with their children living in cattle carts.
So Magda, when did your dad come here? That was your father-in-law.
My father-in-law was very early. My father came when the Turks were doing, getting these people that lived there to join the army. A lot of the Greeks disappeared. They took off. So whenever that was, in the late
Late 20s.
late teens, early 20s, they left. They were not going to serve the Turks.
Now, were you attending church? What's your earliest memory of church in Philadelphia? Did you go as a young girl?
I went, well, we were taken to church basically holidays.
Okay.
Now, you have to remember people didn't have automobiles 90 years ago. And my father worked 6.5 days a week, which means that Sundays he worked. And people traveled in families. Although my mother and my aunt were different than the other Greek women, they were more independent, which gives you an idea from whence I came.
Didn't fall far from the apple tree.
They were very family oriented, and they lived in South Philadelphia or West Philadelphia. My father bought a house in North Philadelphia. And we were the only Greeks, and there was one other family that went to the same high school I did. Everybody else went to West Philadelphia or other schools in that part of the
So
city.
where was the church located that you would go to?
There were two churches. One, the Stefano brothers were tobacconists, and they had cigarettes that they sold, and most of the Greek girls worked there as secretaries or working on the line. And they sponsored a church in South Philadelphia. And then we had a church about 10 blocks from there in South Philadelphia. And the church is still there. It's the cathedral of the area. And the church was founded in the 1700s. So we're one of the old churches. And you can tell because we have a balcony, and that's where the women and the slaves went. The men sat downstairs. We had men sitting on one side of the church and the women on the other side of the church. And then we young ones came along and decided we were going to sit on the men's side of the church. They were so glad to have us show up, I guess they allowed us to do it.
I imagine the service was mostly in Greek at that time.
It was all in Greek, and I was just complaining about the fact that people do not get dressed like we used to come to church, because this is the most important place we ever went. But we had a priest who had been a soldier sergeant in the Greek army during the First World War. And he didn't put up with it. You did what he said or you left. If you came in church not dressed according to what he thought was correct, you were invited to leave, go home, change, and come back. So we learned the hard way. My way or no way. So when you're 93 and you've gone through all these changes in this country, in the world, it's not just this country, it's very difficult to accept some of the change. It's very difficult to accept the changes. And when I come to church, I feel It's not Sunday if I have not come to church. It's, and when you're sick or you're away from church, and the day is endless. It is to me.
Something's missing.
But
So
this,
Magda, when did you and John, you got married in Philly?
yeah,
Let me go back to that.
July 1st,
And the year?
1947.
Okay. And at what point then did you come to Warren?
1947.
Oh, the same
Same year
year?
you were married.
Well, we went on a 2-month honeymoon to South America, and then he didn't take a vacation again for a long time. But
So Warren was a big change from Philadelphia. And you had the big cathedral in Philly, and then you come to Warren.
and
we have
the Greeks,
Our little church.
and may I say that in those years, the Greeks from Warren would come up here for dinner at 2:10, was it? But they couldn't make it on Sunday. It was the only day off, so they stayed home.
Okay.
And I was the first one that was coming regularly. I had an interesting, my Pan was 2 years old, and a lot of the Orthodox were going to the Episcopal Church in Warren. So I took him there, and I decided I would come there every other week and come up here the other weeks. And I stuck him in Sunday school and volunteered to teach a class. I had him say to me, I don't want to go to Jamestown, at which point we stopped going to the Episcopal Church and we went to Jamestown. The kids love the old church, and I was telling Father yesterday that they should be the ones to tell you about the church because they still think of the old church as their church.
And this is the one right behind us.
Right behind us. And my kids were, my children were baptized there. They were, Kathy, I guess, got married here, but Maria and a lot of the other young people were married in this church.
Now, when you came to this church, were the men and women separated up here, or were they together?
Oh, in the church? I never paid attention because I did what I wanted to do,
Good for you.
as you well know.
Good for you.
But I'm not alone. There are other women in this congregation that do what I do, or I do what they do.
What, do you remember who the priest was when you first started coming here?
Yes, Father Janethis, he was here forever. And then we had several after him, and then we had Father Nick. And I give Father Nick the honor of making us part of the city, and he did a lot of things ecumenically with the other churches. And the soup kitchen is in his memory, and when you say festival, you hear Father Nick, and you also hear the other side, if you talk about Father Nick, oh, the church up on the hill. He made us really a big part of the community. And it was he who started the ecumenical movement up here, right? So we have a lot to be thankful for. And part of it is that we are part of the community. Because for a long time, different groups are different people. And today I was thinking again when we were celebrating Christ being taken to the temple for the 40 days. we Christians have to keep remembering Christ was Jewish. A lot of our prayers, a lot of our church is built and blessed in the Hebrew world, which is very annoying when I hear the horrible things that we do to other people. First of all, we're not supposed to do anything to anybody. We're supposed to love everybody. That's what our church teaches. And a lot of times when I'm asked what the difference is between our church and the Catholic Church, our church teaches love. Christ taught love. He taught everybody was a brother or a sister. And the Catholic Church has purgatory, and it has a judging Christ.
Ours is a very loving Christ. Now, Magda, I remember being in Sunday school with your kids. So at what point did you,
Well, when they started having Sunday school.
okay,
And there were a lot of youngsters in those days.
There was a mix of Greeks and Albanians in Jamestown. Was there also a mix in Warren of Greeks and, or is it mostly Greeks in Warren?
I never checked out.
They just came
You
to
were
Orthodox.
Orthodox.
They were
I-
Orthodox, right?
so here it was, the difference was more prominent because we had a Greek Orthodox church and an Albanian Orthodox church. Whereas in Warren, you didn't have either. You just had Orthodox people
That's right.
with K.
Well, some of the Greeks down there were, one family went to the Presbyterian church. The others, if they went anywhere, went to the Episcopal church. When we had services, when we had a wedding or something, the priest would come from here, and we would have it in the Episcopal church usually. It was peculiar for me because I grew up in Philadelphia and New York. I had, in the 30s, when I was 12, I baptized my cousin's child. And Fanaritis was then the Archbishop of New York, of the United States. And he was one of the most fantastic people. And Father Genethis and he came from the same Churio in Greece. And so you had him up here, I think, more than anybody else in the
Did. I
United
remember him
States.
coming up several times as a child.
But he was the most unpretentious person. Even my aunt knew him very well from New York. And when she went to Israel, or rather to Constantinople, she went to see him. And he lived in a cell. He did not live in a pretentious mansion. And he only wore his garments in church for the services. Otherwise, he wore the black rasa, period. And he was available to every single one of us.
He was a saint in his own.
He was.
Magda, what do you remember of our fire here in what we call the old church, our first church, and that transition?
The other church that we had in Philadelphia was more like that one
Okay,
than the church of 1775 or whatever. And we had a lot of our boys, our men, went to Pomfret, which was where the school for priests was. And a lot of them went on, and a lot of them didn't. They got an education. But it was a different world. It's a different world. You can't compare the two. No way, no how.
No, you can't. But do you remember the fire and what the parish went through? And
I
how we got to
remember
build this
a
one?
lot of cooperation from other churches allowing us to have our church services there. It was very well done by the other congregations. We're more together than against with people.
As a faith, yes.
Well, not just the faith. I have people asking me now, when is the festival? They can't wait to get here. And if they haven't been here, they want to know, oh, tell me all about it because so-and-so went, they had a good time, tell us about the food, tell us.
Sure.
So,
And I also remember that you and John were very active in the parish. He was president of parish council on several occasions.
well, come on, can't think of it. Mary, last name,
Astus, Beers,
Italian,
Riolo.
Riolo, and I did the food for the festival for years. Lots of years. And my girls made all of the pitis for 1 year. And I still have George saying that's the best pita he's ever had. So, but people who come here from the big city walk away impressed with this congregation. The fact that we're so close. And I feel like you're all my family. At my age, you're all my children.
We feel that same closeness.
But this is a very, very open place. We, like anybody who comes, we treat everybody, make them feel welcome, and they do.
The people we've talked to that live in town talk a lot about, in the old days, celebrating the name days. Was that a big thing in your family as well?
Yeah, well, there's a reason for this. In all these candiles were live fire. It was oil with a little round thing and a place for a candle. All right, now you have to remember that Greece, Turkey, that whole area was very mountainous, and they were new mountains, which meant that you had a lot of motion with them. So you would have, I always have to look for the word, not hurricanes, earthquakes. So the churches would catch on fire. Now, we who lived in Turkey, we were not registered except in the church, so we didn't exist. When the church burned down, that was where your name, your age, your family, the whole thing was. It disappeared. Not like today where we go around making up names for our children who probably curse us when they grow up. But anyway, you were named for your father's father. And then the next one was a name for your mother's father or mother. And they were all named for saints of the church. Now, you can't celebrate a birthday when you don't know when you were born, but you celebrated a name day. And you're in a village, or like in here, when you had your name day, you had an open house, and everybody you knew didn't have to be invited. They came. So that's what we had when I was a kid. My father's name was John. His feast day was the 7th of of January. My father's name was Prodromo, which means forerunner. So but that is John the Baptist is John Prodromos. So we always had an open house. Now we're no longer in a small town. We're in a city of 2 million people, and no automobiles. So you made trips on a bus or the subways to get to these places,
So that
but
was
you
one
got
of the-
there.
That was one of the more important celebrations you honored.
We all learned how to do Greek dancing. That's how you met other Greek people,
Sure.
how the children got together. And then when people started going to church, and that was primarily because by the 35, 36 people started having automobiles. Now you're free to travel.
Right. How did you meet John?
He came down for his cousin's husband's feast day with his family. They would come down every year. And my father and John's cousin's husband were very good friends, so we were there. And that's where we met.
Was that a little arranged there, or was there a little?
What, the fact that I went to the party? We went to the younger generation went to all of these name days because everybody else's sons and daughters came. We learned how to dance. We used to push the dining room tables out of the way, and we'd jitterbug, and so we met a lot of young people that way.
Sure, that's great. Now you move up to Warren. You have a small population of Greeks in
Who
Warren.
were all older than I was, and we had, except that we were Greek, I had nothing in common with them. I told you I had to learn how to speak all over again. I was younger, but I was always very grown up, Greg, very grown up. I always ran around with older people, I was in high school and I was running around with college kids.
You were very mature for your age.
Yes, because my mother spoke broken English, and she didn't like talking to you because she respected you and didn't want you to be feeling put upon. So I did the talking. So I called if the water didn't run right, I had to call a plumber. If this happened, because my dad's store was in West Philadelphia, where I told you all the Greeks were. So I took care of everything.
So you had responsibility thrust upon you at an early age.
I was also, my family gave me a lot of leeway. I've made people, here she comes again. I used to go to New York City by myself because my aunt lived there. And I would take the train from Philadelphia, go to New York for the weekend. And I would take the subway from Brooklyn and go to Broadway. And I saw Glenn Miller, I saw Tommy Dorsey, I stood in line for Frank Sinatra. I was only 13, 14 years
Oh
old.
my gosh. You saw a lot at an early age.
I did indeed.
So you come up here, did you get involved in a lot of the social activities in Jamestown, being in Warren? Did you come up much for
I
that?
didn't come up here.
No.
No, I think I did start a lot of things. The junior college that we have down there, I was on the committee. We started Head Start, we started senior citizen clubs. I was lucky, and I was Woman of the Year at Warren. So, no, I was very active.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was fun. I did it because I wanted to do it. And I felt fulfilled. I did a lot of things for the schools. I did a lot of things for everything.
All the time raising kids.
Yeah, I had 4 of them. And, well, my father lived with us for 10 years before he died. And my in-laws were just walking distance. And we trusted people. We had babysitters. I've got grandchildren now that won't get their next door neighbor to take care of their kids, which, that's what we did. I'm sure that's what you did.
Back in the day, things were different.
Now everybody's frightened. They're afraid of their shadows. Oh, I don't know whether this child will do this to my kids or not pay any attention to them or take advantage of them.
Yes, there's a concern about the lowering of the moral standard.
Well, I babysat for kids 2 doors down from me in Philadelphia. I would get a quarter. Now they're paying $15 to babysit.
A little different now, huh? Did you and John ever come up for the Balkan dances they had here in town?
No.
In the fall?
Well, you mean no.
One they had at the Crystal Ballroom?
Oh, we went to that one, yeah. We went to some, but when we were younger, no, we had enough. We were going dancing every night.
Sure.
John used to win the cups from the down at Pitt when he went to the, and they wore tails, please.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
quite formal.
And the one club in Warren on New Year's Day, the men wore striped trousers and the black tail with a white. They got all dressed up for Sunday brunch.
oh my goodness.
That's
Those are
why
the days.
it's so different. It's so.
Things have changed dramatically.
I remember when we had open house in elementary school, my dad would wear a tie, suit.
My mother, listen, my mother would wear, she had 2 silver foxes. We put on our very best because she was representing her children and she didn't want her children to be thought of as not with it.
That's great.
Clothes make the man and clothes make the woman. And if anybody tells you otherwise, just take a look around here. I mean, not the church per se, but the world that we live in. We pay $300 and buy jeans that are cut up.
As we think about, we know where the church is today, where do you see the church 20, 30, 40 years from now? What does it look like?
I don't know.
What would you like to see it look like?
I would like it to grow spiritually, for the people to want to be here. They're not here because their background is such.
Magda, what do you think the church could have done different to keep Maria, Pan?
I don't
Kathy?
know.
Kathy kind of filters
See,
in and out, so.
I blame, Pan, I blame on the Jesuits.
Okay,
He went to Georgetown.
right,
He knew as much as the professors, he really did.
right, it's very bright.
And then the Jesuits are a very, very bright people. Can't put them down. And
So
they,
we lost them because of the Jesuits, because it was a stronger teaching than what
well,
we had offered.
all right, I'll
as a
tell you what the
child.
biggest problem is. The very biggest problem. Took you what, 50 years to convert?
Yeah, 40.
No, but truly, you have The story is, the more things one has in common with their spouse, the more they have in common in the way they live. When you have, Jim will come, but he'd rather not. All my, all my kids are half. Now the younger ones are quarter Greek. And it's not the thing to do to go to church anyhow. And now they have an excuse. You go here and you go here, and I don't know where I want to go. And I have one who says, well, didn't baptize them. Great-grandmother is going crazy. And I'm not the only one. A lot of my Catholic friends are going crazy. And then you get from the one that isn't, they'll say, well, they'll pick a church when they grow up. If they don't go to church, what are they going to pick up? And they have no idea what there is. And it's easier not to fight with their, as they get older, who wants to sit there and fight?
The way we are, the current atmosphere of the church, are you happy with the way things are going right now?
I'm very happy with the church. I've always have been. I've always worked for it. If I don't like something, that's one thing. If you don't speak up when you don't like something or something is difficult to understand, nobody's going to know that you're having a problem. And so you withdraw. I'm talking to somebody that has gone through this, I'm sure, all the way through.
Speak up.
So you have to say, don't use so much Greek, or go ahead and use it. My kids complain now, why didn't I make them learn how to speak Greek? And I look at them and I'd say, their two grandfathers and grandmother came over to the house every night and they played cards. And they weren't speaking Yiddish or Spanish or Timbuktu. They were speaking Greek. If you're so concerned, why didn't you learn? But this is also the fault of the world we live in. When you talk to Philippe Bender, and he went to school there, you are informed. Now, your father goes to work 6 days a week, right? And he gets dressed up, wears a suit, tie, dress shoes, right? He goes to work at 8, doesn't get home till 5. Well, when he was in school, they go to school from 8 to 5, 6 days a week. They dress like they're going to business and not blue tie or black tie, or they dress like they are banker or...
It's everybody's job for the day, school or work.
That's right.
Is this in Russia? Magda, was this in Russia?
Yeah.
The Philip you're talking about? Okay.
But the other thing that you have, in every country, by the time you're in 3rd grade, you've learned your language plus another language.
So that's a shortcoming here in the States.
And we, now my father and mother and their groups spoke Greek. I never went to school.
It wasn't available.
Mary Ann can read and write better than I can't.
And she learned it at the University of Buffalo.
Well,
And it wasn't always available. So, but over the years, our services, I want to say now, are probably 90% English.
But our priests are better educated to begin with.
Yes.
Because
And they're
in
English speaking.
Europe, you lived in a small town, And the priest probably served as an altar boy and learned by rote. And he really didn't know that much about anything. And we didn't encourage people to go out. I've got a whole bookcase full of all the churches. I've been to all the churches. I've participated. I can tell you the difference between us and them. And you'll find out that, yes, there are similarities. Some of them, they're so far out and so far away from anything that it doesn't seem like a religion. And I don't put anybody's religion down. This is how they were raised. This is what they believe. And if you believe it, that you're one with God, you're happy, that's what's important.
You live it. Do you have any more questions, Liz? Is there anything we didn't ask or forgot to ask or think we should ask that you
No.
haven't covered?
I think that we should be spending our time with the kids in Sunday school, explaining remember, for a while their Father Raphael, we had church Sunday schools coming here.
Bible studies.
We should do this with our kids too, so that they can see where. I had a lot of Jewish friends. I went to Seder's. I know why they bury them the way they do, why they put the pebbles on. You should be familiar with other people's lives. And then you can take the good, and you can also find that there's a lot of similarity.
You tear down the walls in between us. Can you do that?
Yes.
Well, Magda, thanks so much for sharing your story.
Did you learn anything?
I learned a lot.
Learned a
Okay.
lot. Even I learned a lot.
We
It's a
really
good
appreciate you
refresher
taking the
course.
time to do this.
I'd love to bring the back to the front and make it one. I've got all these kids, 50 and 60 years old, and I'm giving history lessons to, religious, just in conversation. And they go away and they come back and they want to hear more. We really do want to learn how other people do and why they do it.
I think what's really special, and I know the Greeks were persecuted in Turkey, and that your family hung on to their faith, your parents, and you brought it, and they brought it to the U.S. and continued it. And it's still with you and the children at some level. And that's an awesome feat.
I'll tell you what is crazy. This is the first year I wasn't going to do Christmas Eve. And they talked me, then I said, all right, we'll just have finger food.
Uh-huh.
So Kathy made the cheese and Maria made but Thanksgiving, I didn't do, I make a meat stuffing. That's how we do it. It was a meat stuffing. And we went to Alexander's house for Thanksgiving, and there were only 5 of us. Now, I'm used to 25 for Thanksgiving, and for Christmas, and for everything else. So I didn't make the thing, because she's not Greek. She really hasn't been around that much. And I felt maybe she would be hurt or insulted, or if she had wanted it, she would have asked it. So we didn't have it. So I get a phone call from Nicholas, who's Alexander's oldest brother. They're coming for Christmas this year, because every other year they go there, here. He said, we are having stuffing, Greek stuffing, aren't we? So I said, yeah. Now, the other thing that we have, because we're up to 30 people, and we're not having meat, and it's pretty hard to come up. I had lobster tails one year. Well, I figured that was beyond the call of duty. So we make spaghetti, but I make it our style.
Greek style,
I don't know if you're Greek,
or
but our
Turkish
Greek.
style, your Greek style,
You burn the butter,
Greek style.
you put it on the spaghetti. You put the, be-
Macarronada.
the best kind of cheese. And this stuff they use around here, it's gotta be Romano or better, okay? So, then you have the cheese, and then you put cinnamon on it. Ah,
It's interesting.
they love it.
That sounds good.
So don't I get a phone call from one of the others saying, by the way, you are going to make the cheese?
And those are all the memories tied to our special holidays, and it's a
Yeah.
wonderful thing. Magda, thank you, honey.
Thank you for asking me.
Tell the children they'll see it on Facebook and so.
But the children,
Todd?